You know, when we picture the future of air combat, our minds probably jump to some crazy advanced fighter jet, right? Sleek, fast, one of a kind. But what if the real revolution, what if it isn't about building a better plane at all? What if it's about getting thousands of them to act like they have a single mind? Well, that's exactly what we're going to talk about. Let's dive into the wild world of UAV swarms.
And this idea, right here, it's set to completely flip the script on what military dominance even means. We are talking about a total paradigm shift. The power isn't in one single expensive unit anymore. It's in the collective. Imagine a huge, coordinated swarm that can think, adapt, and strike, all as one.
Okay, so this whole swarm concept, it didn't just pop up out of nowhere. It's really the next logical step, you know? It's the culmination of over 100 years of developing unmanned aircraft. We've been moving from these simple, one-off drones to, well, to something way, way more powerful.
I mean, think about the journey here. It started way back in World War I with these early aerial torpedoes, like the Kettering Bug. Pretty basic stuff. Fast forward to the Cold War, and we had target drones, things like the Ryan Firebee, mostly for practice. And then, of course, the modern era brought us the Predator drone, a huge leap for surveillance and strikes. But here's the key. Every single one of those steps, it was all about a single aircraft doing a single job. The next frontier? It's connecting them all. It's the autonomous swarm.
And this right here, this is the absolute core of the change. It's so important to get this. We're not just building better drones anymore. That's not the goal. We're building systems where the group itself is the weapon. The intelligence, it's not locked inside one super smart drone. Nope, it emerges from all the little interactions happening across the entire swarm. It's a collective brain.
So the big question is, how on earth do you get hundreds, maybe thousands, of these things to work together? Especially with no central pilot pulling all the strings like a puppet master? Well, the answer is kind of amazing, and it comes straight from nature. We're basically learning from the masters, ants, birds, and bees.
And this brings us to the key idea, swarm intelligence. Think about it. In a flock of birds or a colony of ants, there's no single leader yelling out orders, right? There's no queen bee micromanaging everything. Instead, you get this incredibly complex, intelligent behavior that just emerges from tons of simple individual interactions. It's decentralized, it's self-organizing, and because of that, it's unbelievably resilient.
But that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How does a swarm organize itself with no leader? It seems like it should be chaotic, just impossibly complex. But the secret, and this is the really cool part, it all comes down to a few surprisingly simple rules that each and every member of the swarm is following. Just take a flock of birds, for example. It looks so intricate, right? But computer models have shown that you can get that beautiful, coordinated flight from just 3 super basic rules. Rule 1, separation. Basically, don't crash into your neighbors. Rule 2, alignment. Try to fly in the same general direction as the birds around you. And Rule 3, cohesion. Try to stick with the group. That's it. From just those 3 simple inputs, you get this incredibly sophisticated, adaptive behavior. It's wild.
And this is where it gets really practical. Look at how these behaviors in nature translate directly into military tactics. It's like a cheat sheet. You've got ants foraging for food. Well, that inspired something called ant colony optimization, which helps a swarm find the safest, most survivable routes to a target. Bird flocking, that's the basis for particle swarm optimization, which is perfect for maintaining tight, precise combat formations. And bees, the way they search for nectar, that's being used to help a swarm dynamically change its mission on the fly based on new intel. We're literally borrowing nature's best algorithms.
All right, so we've got the theory, which is fascinating stuff. But let's get down to brass tacks. How does all this translate into actual game-changing advantages on the battlefield? What can a swarm really do?
Well, the list of new capabilities is, frankly, revolutionary. First up, you can overwhelm enemy air defenses. This is huge. It's called SEAD, or Suppression of Enemy Air Defenses. Imagine sending so many drones at a sophisticated missile battery that it just can't cope. It's saturated. Then there's surveillance. You can have persistent, everywhere surveillance, ISR, over huge areas, something a single plane could never do. They can also launch coordinated air-to-air attacks, act as a massive web of decoys to confuse the enemy, or even form their own self-healing communication network over the battlefield. The possibilities are staggering.
But here's the absolute game changer. A swarm's greatest strength is that it's expendable. It can win through sheer numbers. It can launch these saturation attacks, just flooding an enemy's defenses with more targets than they can possibly handle. The system just gets overwhelmed. Think about it. Losing dozens, even hundreds of these cheap drones, it's a plan for loss. It doesn't stop the mission. That's a luxury you just don't have with traditional air forces.
Okay, but let's pump the brakes for a second. This future isn't a done deal. Not yet. Unleashing an autonomous force on this scale, well, it comes with some massive technical hurdles. And maybe even more important than that, it raises some really profound ethical questions that we absolutely have to face.
I mean, just look at the technical side. The challenges are enormous. How do you cram enough processing power onto a tiny, cheap drone? How do you make sure thousands of them can all talk to each other without getting their signals jammed? What happens when the enemy denies GPS? How do they find their way? And don't even get me started on the logistics. How do you launch, recover, and maintain a fleet of thousands of these things quickly? These are not easy problems to solve.
And then you have the ethical minefield. The buzzword you always hear is meaningful human control. But let's be real. What does that actually mean when you're talking about a swarm that makes decisions in microseconds? It's reacting to threats faster than any human brain could possibly process, let alone approve. Where does the human fit in?
And that just spirals right into the accountability problem. If an autonomous swarm messes up, and it will, if it hits the wrong target, if it causes civilian casualties, who's to blame? Is it the commander who sent it out? The programmer who wrote the code? The company that built it? Right now, it's a complete legal and ethical black box, and we are just starting to peek inside.
Okay, let's zoom out again to the big picture, because the implications here go way beyond just tactics on a battlefield. This technology has the potential to fundamentally redraw the map of global power. We're talking about changing the very nature of war and deterrence.
And this comparison really just lays it all out. On one hand, you have legacy air power. Centralized, super expensive, and incredibly high risk for the pilots. On the other, you have the swarm, decentralized, low cost, and resilient. Losing a single billion-dollar stealth fighter is a national catastrophe, but losing 1,000, $10,000 drones? That's just a calculated cost of the mission. The mindset is completely different.
And here is maybe the biggest geopolitical bombshell of all. For all of modern history, dominating the air was something only wealthy superpowers could afford to do. It was an exclusive club, but swarms of cheap, easy-to-make drones, they could completely level the playing field. People are calling it the democratization of air power. And it means that smaller nations, or heck, even non-state groups, could suddenly pose a very real threat to the world's biggest military powers.
So as we're standing right on the edge of this completely new era, the final thought is this. The biggest challenge isn't technical, it's human. As this tech goes from sci-fi to reality, our greatest test won't be mastering the swarm, it'll be defining our own role within it. It's about figuring out our place and our responsibility in a future where the battlefield is becoming more and more autonomous.